The god Set was so envious of his brother Osiris that he committed a dastardly act. He nailed Osiris into a box and threw it into the Nile River. "Aye!" screamed Isis. She ran along the shore, arms outstretched. She must catch up. She must pull the box to safety. She imagined her husband trapped inside, panicked. She ran. But the current raced north, carrying her husband inexorably toward the sea, and the wind blew south, impeding her every step. She ran hard, seeing the white foam swirl of the swift and wild river. She ran harder, hearing nothing but the shriek of the wind rasping her ears raw. The box was already out of sight. Isis had to run yet faster. That was her husband, the love of her life. Isis ran all that day, all that night, all the next day. Her feet bled, her legs ached. When she arrived at the seashore, she raced back and forth, calling out over the green and blue and purple waters, calling, calling. She rent her hair. She grabbed a clamshell and shaved off her eyebrows. She beat her chest. The world spun round this goddess, this woman in love, bereft and alone, who had no choice but to prostrate herself on the beach and wait for the dizziness to pass, and hope against hope that her husband had managed to get out of the box before he suffocated. Meanwhile, the box that held Osiris had washed out the middle of the vast Mediterranean Sea and floated in the Wajdur, that great green, aimlessly, a rudderless, sailless skiff, until the currents eventually carried it toward shore again. But not back to the mouth of the Nile, where miserable Isis lay crying. No. The box settled far to the east, near the city of Kubna, in the land of the Kanani. The coast there was thick with strong reeds that reached out. Like tentacles, they slipped around and over and under each other and pulled the box in, wrapping themselves about it over and over, caressingly. Somehow, one reed pushed against another so insistently that the two reeds merged, and then another merged with them, and soon the mass of reeds was a single shrub engulfing the box, and then the shrub grew. This sort of magic doesn't happen every day. In magic it surely was. For inside that box lay the corpse of the god Osiris, who had known how to bring fertility to the earth, who could make anything grow. So perhaps that very power had transferred from the god to the box as he gave his last breath. Who can know such a thing? Yet that shrub grew faster than any shrub had ever grown before, and became a massive cedar tree, 130 feet tall, studded with cones. Hoopoe birds came in droves to give themselves sand baths under the tree and to nest among its silver-green, needle-like leaves. The mighty cedar could be seen from afar, but it could be smelled even before it was seen, for it gave off a spicy, alluring aroma. Soon the king himself noticed the tree, and he called his queen to his side to inhale its essence. She swooned at the cedar perfume. After all, she was late in pregnancy, and she was given to swooning. There was no question about it. The tree was majestic. It must therefore grace the king's palace. It took a troop of workers to cut through the base and haul the tree to the palace, where it became a beautiful column that all could admire. And they did. The column made them feel a certain peace. It offered a sense of assurance that all would be well with the world. It was almost godly in that way. Still, no one guessed that inside the trunk nestled the box that held Osiris. Back on the shore of Egypt, the goddess Isis lay desperate. Moons had passed, and still she remained immobile. But now she had awoken from her grief-stricken stupor by the insistent calls, "Boo, boo, boo," and again, "Boo, boo, boo," all around her. She sat up, agog at the flock of hoopoes with their colorful crests strutting in profusion. These were the birds who had nestled in the cedar the king had cut down. They were in mourning for its loss. They had flown all this way, searching for a substitute tree, when they spotted Isis, and instinctively they were drawn to her. Instinctively they understood her grief matched theirs. The birds called, "Boo, boo, boo," and Isis stood, "Boo, boo, boo." The birds took to the air and circled above her. Isis followed, and the procession moved east. A wavering line along the sands, a spiraling in the heavens. Isis sensed an urgency in the birds, and hope swelled her heart. These birds were leading her to Osiris. What else could this mean? With each day her hopes grew, till her heart was ready to burst. There, at long last, was the splendid palace of Kubna. Isis wondered, sure the box would be just past that wall, just round that corner, just under that eave. But the box was nowhere. Without warning, without preamble, reason finally coated Isis's tongue with a bitter salt. Osiris was dead. Whether she found the box or not, he was dead. It was almost as though he were nearby, with his spirit telling her that, forcing her to understand. Isis found a large, smooth, warm rock in the courtyard. She sat and wept. But these were tears of acceptance and exhaustion. It was over. So she thought. But inside the Kubna palace, the royal handmaidens whispered. A morose stranger sat in the courtyard. She was thin as a wind-whipped pine. But still one could see a beauty in those cheekbones, that long neck, those cupped hands. The royal handmaidens peeked out at her, weary at first, but then gradually worried for her. Grief weighed on that stranger, so heavily it hurt them to watch. This woman was broken. They approached on quiet feet. Isis turned and saw their frightened faces, and her wounded heart opened. After all, her grief was due to no fault of theirs. She smiled through tears and patted the empty spot on the rock beside her. These handmaidens were hardly older than girls, innocent and fresh. She plaited their hair and exhaled perfume onto their golden skin, and when they asked what had happened to her, she talked sweetly of nothing. Deities knew that humans weren't good at discussions about death. The afternoon passed, and one by one the maidens left. Isis folded one hand inside the other and sat. She wasn't waiting. There was nothing to wait for. She was just resting. Soon those maidens reappeared and took Isis by both hands and led her to their queen, recommending her sincerely. The queen paused, a finger pressed to her cheek. "You're not like what the girl said, not at all." Isis didn't speak. She wasn't sure why she was still standing there. She might as well leave. You're older than my usual handmaidens, but I sense your true value." Isis jerked to attention. She looked closely at this queen now, at the tired eyes, the flushed cheeks. Did she really know she was in the presence of a goddess? "I sense the good in you. You can help me in the way I most need help." The queen bid Isis to follow her into another chamber, an infant's chamber. The queen picked up her newborn son and placed him in Isis's arms. "You are his new nursemaid." Beautiful child. Tiny hands with slender fingers and nearly transparent nails, tiny feet with toes that curled at a touch, a mouth that rounded when Isis rounded hers, eyes that blinked when Isis blinked hers, a round head that gave off the scent of honey, with hair softer than down. What a perfect thing was a baby. Oh, how Isis wished that she and Osiris had had children, for then she could go on loving him through the baby. But for now, it was enough to love this queen's baby, this perfect prince. Isis bathed him and sang to him and held him close. She nuzzled his ear. She adored him. And soon the tiny prince adored Isis. Then, one day, as she leaned against a wide pillar she had taken a liking to, it occurred to Isis that the prince would grow old and die. He would leave her, just as Osiris had. She couldn't go through that pain again. She had to prevent it. She would confer immortality upon the baby. She could do that. All it took was the right spell and purification of fire. Isis gathered cedar brush, for there was much lying near the pillar, and set it aflame. She placed the baby in the fire. He screamed. It was all she could do to keep herself from snatching him back. Yet she mustn't. She transformed herself into a swallow, flying round the huge pillar. The child shrieked. But it wouldn't be long now. The spell was nearly complete. Isis had to keep circling that pillar. The queen rushed in and pulled the blistered baby from the embers. Isis's scream pierced the cosmos. The queen had ruined everything. Instantly, Isis became herself again and revealed that she was a goddess. She demanded the pillar be split open and that a massive fire be built so she could make the prince immortal. When the workers split the pillar, the box with Osiris fell out. It was still nailed shut, sealed off from air. Isis's cry of grief nearly strangled her. It did strangle the baby prince. He died in his mother's arms. Tragedy upon tragedy. Isis put the coffin in a boat and brought it back to Egypt. She would bury her husband as soon as they arrived home. Yet, once they were on Egyptian soil, the desire seized her to open the coffin for one last embrace. Alas, piteous sight! Isis wept on the wasted body of Osiris. She closed the coffin and hid it in a swamp while she prepared herself for the rituals of burial. But during these months, Set had learned how to transform himself into a fabulous beast, the terror of the desert, with the belly and back of a wolf, a long snout that could pick up any odor, square ears that could detect any sound, and a bent tail that warned others off. Fearsome and vicious, he hunted in that form by night. And that very night, Set, when he was out hunting, came across the coffin. He opened it and ripped Osiris's body into 14 pieces. He threw the scrappy lumps of his brother as far as he could across the face of Egypt. This way Isis could never give him a proper burial. Osiris could never be whole in the ever after. Set had made mayhem of Isis and Osiris's lives. In victory, he howled so loud the earth shook. Yet still the story is not at its end, for good must prevail, or we would all be strangers to hope. Isis wept. She sobbed. Set's sister-wife, Nephthys, felt splintered. No one could watch the misery of Isis and not be touched. But it was Nephthys' husband who had caused the misery. It was Set, that wild god Set. Didn't a wife owe loyalty to her husband, even if he was wild? Nephthys chewed her knuckles. Isis's tears fell in the Nile River till it overflowed and flooded the lands. And still she cried. Nephthys shook her head. There were all kinds of loyalty. Isis was her sister, and Osiris was her brother, after all. And there was also a touchy and secret matter concerning Nephthys' son Anubis, something that involved Osiris and made Nephthys feel she owed Isis. And so she went to Isis and helped her gather the parts of Osiris. They watched for circling birds of prey, a clue every time, and ran from one grisly sight to another until they had collected 13 pieces. But the 14th, where was it? Lost, hissed a passing serpent. Lost in a marsh monster. In grief, Isis rolled in the mud. An ibis waded past, making his quiet grrr, the throaty noise of breeding. And Isis knew this was the god Thoth, the tongue of the god Ra, come to give advice. So she let out a low guttural wail, mimicking Thoth's, and the pieces of Osiris assembled themselves. And Isis fashioned the missing part out of wax and clay. So Osiris was whole, and she kissed him back into consciousness. Osiris looked at her with a vacant, slack face, but Isis kept kissing him, and soon both were lost in the sweet delight of matrimony. When Isis woke in the morning, she reached for her love. Alas, Osiris was gone. She had known he had to leave. It was inevitable. The magic wail Thoth had taught Isis, the wail that had brought Osiris to life again, was not strong enough to maintain that life. Husband and wife were together only one night, blessed and wondrous night, unique in its shattering beauty, but gone. Yet Isis was not alone. She was with child. She'd sensed this even the night before. It was an instant understanding. No one above ground knew, however, and it was essential that no one find out, for the world had turned hostile. Osiris was now safe in the underworld duat, but Isis was still above, still walking the hot sands of Egypt, still haunted by her murderous brother Set. Set had usurped the lands formerly ruled by Osiris. He sat on his brother's throne, shameless. Isis's bones would have clacked if her flesh didn't clothe them. No evil was beyond the monster's Set. He must not find out about the child within Isis. So Isis took off the girdle with the filigreed buckle and the intricate knot and let her gowns flow loose. She bent forward, leaning over her staff as though her back ached. No one saw the bulges in her belly where the child inside thrashed about and grew. Sometimes Isis couldn't hold in the smiles those kicks brought. But if anyone asked what made her happy, she recounted the antics of the human children that she was so fond of visiting. Indeed, human women watched how Isis played with her children, and they called her the goddess of fertility. They asked her help on matters of family life. They asked her how to maintain domestic tranquility, questions that flustered Isis, because she was the last one to understand that. Look what her brother had done to her husband. Just look. A shiver shot up her spine. But she was defiant. Though she was not beside Osiris physically, she was beside him in thoughts. The night they were together, he had said she was like the welcome north wind on the hottest days. He called her the sweet wind that refreshes, and that new name now lived around her as an aura. It brushed her cheeks so softly that she couldn't help but turn her face toward it. She felt more enlivened with every day. Yes, she could manage in this life. Yes, this was good. And it could get better. Isis learned that Osiris had taken a ruling role in the underworld. She decided to help him in this task. Why not? She couldn't live down in Duat, for she was alive. And she couldn't be a true wife to Osiris, for he was dead. But she could visit and stand behind him as he judged the dead. She could blow him kisses. She could truly be the sweet wind that refreshes. Why not? Who could begrudge her this small concession? What a joy it was the first time to stand before Osiris again in Duat. His eyes were pools of devotion, salty sweet and buoyant, a place to swim, not drown. Then Osiris reached out his hand and laid it heavily on Isis's belly and felt the life within, and Isis cried out. Just one cry of loss, for she had to smile as well. She could manage in this life. Now that she could see Osiris again, she could really manage. Finally, the labor pains started. Isis fled to the same swamp in the delta where she'd hidden Osiris's coffin 9 months earlier. There the child was born, and Isis named him Horus, after his uncle Horus the Elder. Since Ra and Horus spent so much time together, Isis hoped Ra would take a special interest in her son Horus, and might even protect him. But she didn't count on it. Up above ground, Isis counted on no one but herself. She raised her son in secret, but she knew it would take more than determination and cleverness to keep him safe. It would take magic. A spasm racked her, for she had failed so badly in the magic she tried to wield to make the little prince immortal. Still, Isis shouldn't be so scared. After all, she had brought Osiris back to life that one beautiful night. That was magic. The key was not in transformations and fires, but in the power of words. How obvious! The god Ra had created everything from words. Isis should have recognized that was the right route from the start. Words were the charm. And so Isis decided to cultivate the magic of words. She would succeed this time. How? How could she learn? And there they were, humans. They swarmed like bees. They were both weak and foolish, so they were continually getting sick and injured. They presented the perfect opportunity for a budding magician to practice. Isis cured a cold. Simple enough. She made firm a broken bone. She calmed a head gone crazy from fear and banished a growth that would have eventually sucked life away. Whatever the ailment, Isis found within herself the words to heal it. She was good at this, and she kept getting better. But she had to get perfect. Nothing less could protect against Set. One day, a lethal scorpion stung her son, her treasured child. She had never tried to cure a god before, but instantly, without prompt, she named the scorpion. That's all it took, a name, and with it Isis gained power over the scorpion and his poison. The god boy revived in one breath. Yes, Isis was at the top of her prowess, and still fear not at her. Set was the prince of darkness, the blight of the cosmos. Isis had to be the most powerful magician ever. So Isis resolved to take a terrible chance. The sun god Ra had grown old, and he was stumbling in his walk. He drooled, as old men sometimes do. Isis followed him, quiet as a shadow. She scooped up that drool and mixed it with dirt and rolled out a snake that she filled with a poison only she knew the antidote to. In the morning, when Ra went to make the journey across the sky, the snake struck so fast Ra never saw it. The god groaned and threw himself around. The pain was terrible and terrifying. His legs swelled double, his arms tingled, his whole body tingled. He screamed. Jeb and Nut and Tefnut and Shu came rushing. What happened? I don't know. Heal me. Use magic. Toth. I'll fetch Toth. Not just Toth. Find Isis. She's the best magician. But Isis was already there. She'd been there all along, of course, hiding. She stepped past the others now and made a show of examining Ra carefully. Her hands trembled from the deceit. But she was a mother. Whatever else she was a mother with a son to protect. She proclaimed, "A snake bite. Oh, the very worst." Ra fell to the ground and panted, "Heal me." "I will." Isis turned to the others. "Stand back. We need room for the magic to work." When the others were out of hearing range, Isis put her lips to Ra's ear. "I'll cure you, but first tell me your secret name." Every deity had a secret name. If Isis knew Ra's, she could have Ra's powers. She would become as powerful as him. She could then protect her son. Ra rolled his head from side to side. No god had yet revealed that secret to any other. But the serpent's toxins were fierce. Already his vision blurred. The rosy dawn turned gray. He was dizzy and nauseated. "I am the creator of the cosmos," he choked out. "The ripener of crops. I wear a solar disk on my head and I bring heat." "Those aren't names." "At dawn I am Ra Kapra, the scarab," Ra breathed with difficulty. "At noon I am Ra Herakti, the falcon." His throat was closing. At night I am. No. Isis's own eyes blurred with tears. This old man was her great-grandfather, and she was letting him decay moment by moment. She had caused this. If he remained stubborn, his blood would stain her hands for eternity. Yet she wouldn't say the magic words. She wouldn't abandon her son. Everyone knows these names, Great Ra. I need your secret name. Help me, Isis. Her heart broke, but she controlled her tongue. Those magic words must not escape. Your secret name, your essence, don't fail me, please. Nothing less will do. And so, Ra whispered to Isis with what would have been his last breath, and she cured him in the nick of time. From then on, Ra ruled only in the heavens, and Isis ruled on earth, and of course her husband Osiris ruled below. Everyone thought this was Isis's grand plan. She wanted supreme power. They didn't know about her son. They didn't know her goal was simply to protect him. But that's exactly what she did, until he was a young man, strong and clear-eyed and ready. Then she told the other deities that Horus, her son, was here, his father's son, the rightful heir to his father's throne. That is when Horus's struggles began.